No one talks about this one thing. Richard Branson, Tim Ferriss, and also Ryan Johnson check their health extensively. They also include tests to check their heart health, which is very important. Dr. Peter Attia emphasizes this as well. But why is this important? There's one thing in specific nearly no one knows about. And 1 out of 500 individuals has this one thing. It's called cardiomyopathy, and it could go unrecognized for multiple years until one experiences a sudden death by heart attack. We see this mostly in famous footballers who suddenly die by a heart attack. Cardiomyopathy can impact people who do a lot of high-intensity sports or entrepreneurs like us who are exposed to high-stress situations, which puts a lot of stress on our cardiovascular system. But what is cardiomyopathy? My name is Jonas, and I help entrepreneurs achieve prime performance and health with my scientific-based health system. And in today's video, I'm going to explain to you, first of all, what is cardiomyopathy? Second of all, how can you recognize it? And third of all, how can you take preventive measures in form of training against cardiomyopathy and reduce the risk of dying by a heart attack? So let's dive straight into it. What is cardiomyopathy? Cardiomyopathy is an inherited disease, meaning you can get it from your parents, which affects your heart. And in specifically, or in detail, it makes your heart grow bigger than normal. But why is cardiomyopathy impactful for us as entrepreneurs? There are 4 major points which we're going to tackle. The first one being that if we have a cardiomyopathy, we are more susceptible to having heart attacks. This leads me to the second point, which is that it is especially important for individuals who operate under high stress that they recognize if they have one or not. Why? 50% of all sudden heart deaths in athletes are due to cardiomyopathy. So we see how big of a risk that can be. And now, third point is, and we see this picture here, this is a picture of a footballer who just had a heart attack and at that moment is actually dying because the people around him and the medical team failed to reactivate his heart, which sadly enough led to a death of that footballer. So that's just an example, a practical example, which we have here. And the third point now is, well, you may think, but I'm not an athlete. That's fair. But the thing which I already mentioned earlier is that you may experience high stress situations in your job, which puts a lot of stress on your cardiovascular system, meaning your heart and your blood vessels and bloodstream, which can also affect your health and your risk of dying due to a heart attack. This being because of hectic schedules, there should be a calendar, or stressful jobs or stressful situations, which can put a lot of stress on us as an individual, as I said already, on our cardiovascular system, which in total just increases the risk of dying due to a heart attack. Now, what problems can we resolve by identifying a cardiomyopathy? Well, this is actually pretty simple. So if we detect or try to detect a cardiomyopathy and we find one, we can prevent a heart attack from happening or just reduce the risk of having one. And why is this important? Well, if we have a heart attack, obviously we might die from it. But also, if we have one and we survive it, there may be a big chance that we did a lot of damage to our body because our heart didn't function for a time period, which leads to decreased blood flow in all of our body, which can damage our organs and big parts of our overall and total body. So we want to make sure, we want to decrease that risk as much as possible so that we can stay healthy for as long as possible. And it's just for us as entrepreneurs another variable we can eliminate to perform at our best level and stay healthy and risk-free. Well, now the question arises, how can one detect a cardiomyopathy early on? This answer is actually pretty simple. It is by doing an ECG. What is an ECG? ECG stands for electrocardiogram, and nearly 100% of all cardiomyopathies can be recognized just by doing a simple ECG. And what you're doing if you're doing such analysis is you're just checking whether your heart is functioning properly, and you see the rhythm of your heart, the electrical stimulus, and you can just check your overall heart health in one diagram. Now you might ask yourself, okay, well, how can I implement this into my life, and how can I recognize if I have a cardiomyopathy or not? Well, this is actually pretty simple. First of all, you can start out by doing an ECG with just your Apple Watch. And everyone, should be an Apple Watch, everyone can do this who has an Apple Watch. Second point would be that you consult a person who can read an ECG, for example me, or you go to a specialist who analyzes your ECG so that you are safe and know whether you have one or not. I would advise you to just be careful because maybe normal doctors can oversee it. That's also the reason why, for example, famous and elite footballers die due to cardiomyopathy. I think they let their heart be checked or have their heart checked by a doctor. And then you wonder, okay, why does that football player still die due to a heart attack because of cardiomyopathy? Well, that might be because that doctor just didn't recognize it. So be careful which person you ask to analyze your ECG. Now, I want to give you some points with which you can analyze if you have a cardiomyopathy or not. So if we look at this ECG here, you can see those ST segments, it is called, which are a little bit too low in that area. And also here, if we look at the so-called QRS complex, in this case, this QRS complex is too elevated or too big. And if this QRS complex is too big, we know that our heart muscle really contracts a lot and uses a lot of electrical stimulus, which leads us to the conclusion that our heart is really big, because normal hearts don't use so much electrical stimulus to function properly. So those are typical signs for a cardiomyopathy. We also see this here where the QRS complex even overlaps with the other in one ECG, which are clear signs that an individual has cardiomyopathy. Now, if you happen to have a cardiomyopathy, here's how you can train yourself to reduce the risk of having a heart attack. And first of all, I want to dive deeper into the benefits of training. What we see here is a study that has been conducted, and they looked at the forearm blood flow and the muscle sympathetic nerve activity. And they found that if individuals have a high forearm blood flow and a low muscle sympathetic nerve activity, they are less likely to die from a heart attack. And in that case, they are 50% less likely to die from a heart attack. Whereas the other individuals, which had less than like 1.87 milliliters per minute per 100 milliliter blood flow in their forearm, and a muscle sympathetic nerve activity which was higher than 49 bursts per minute, around 50% died because of a heart attack. So you see how impactful training can be. Now the question arises, okay, how can you train? There are 2 points which one should take into consideration. The first of all being, we want to build our aerobic, so-called aerobic base. So if you have a pyramid here, the aerobic base would be down here, and the aerobic base is a term which describes how you can train and provide oxygen to your body when you're doing low intensity training. And how can we build this aerobic base here? Well, we want to do an activity which is around 50 to 80% of our maximum capacity. And how do we determine, or how do we know that? Well, a good rule of thumb is, without doing expensive scientific tests, such as lactate or maximum threshold tests, is that we want to, or we have the number 220, and we distract our age from that number, and then we have our maximal heart rate. So I make an example. If an individual is 40 years old, we take 220 minus 40 equals 180. So we know that that individual or the maximal heart rate is 180. If we want to train at 50% of our maximal capacity, we want to make sure that our heart rate is at 90%. 80% in that case would be, just give me a second, 3 times is 30, 45, up to 144. So this is how an individual aged 40 years old can calculate their range in which they want to build their aerobic base in. And if we do high intensity training, like first of all, we want to avoid high intensity training as much as possible if we have a cardiomyopathy. But if one chooses to do so, it is important to have a, first of all, defibrillator nearby, and also contact people who are near to you who will observe you or train with you while you are doing this training, so that they can intervene if you happen to have a heart attack. Also, a good measure one can take is to take beta blockers. What do? They lower your heart frequency and decrease the risk of having a heart attack in stressful situations. But there it is important to talk to a doctor to identify how high the doses should be. So to conclude, we've looked at why cardiomyopathy is important to you as an entrepreneur, how you can identify it, what to look out for in an ECG, and also who to talk to if you want to have a good analysis of your ECG in and of itself. Lastly, we've talked about the benefits of training and how it can reduce the risk of having a heart attack due to a cardiomyopathy by 50% or more, and how to train exactly to reduce the risk. So if you found this video valuable and you want other people to see this as well, you can leave a like. If you're someone who is looking to optimize their health and performance, feel free to click the link below and schedule a call with me to see if you're a good fit and if you can optimize your health and performance, and I hope to see you there. Otherwise, I wish you a good day, a good week. I hope that you crush your goals with prime performance and health, and I hope that you stay healthy. With that being said, take care, and I hope to see you soon. Best wishes, Jonas.